Once again, it's because of a government outside the framework of the Constitution and a people who will not stand up and put them back in their box. Post-constitutional society.
Yeah.
That's where we are.
Yeah.
But Franklin, Washington, JC. Franklin, Washington. Why don't you put that up there for our folks? This one you're going to need sound on.
Yep.
Franklin County, Washington is in a bit of a turmoil today. Was this today? I think it was a day or so ago. But I'm going to play some of this for you. Like, I've got notes. I took notes because we are a teach show and not a talk show. And I'm going to ask JC to pause the video from time to time because I want to teach you how to respond to people like this.
All right.
Go ahead.
First thing on the agenda is approval of the minutes, August 10th, 2021. Is there any corrections, revisions?
Mr. Chairman, I suppose it falls to me once again to point out that you're conducting yourself in a manner that is not only inappropriate, unlawful.
Excuse me. I'm asking for approval. I'm asking for approval of minutes. Is there approval of minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I have the floor.
No, you don't have the floor. I have the floor. I've asked for approval of minutes.
Sheriff, I'm going to ask one time.
Commissioner Peck, Commissioner Peck, you are not the chairman.
Pause that for a second,
You are not
JC.
the
So what
chairman,
we're having
Commissioner
here is an argument between two chairmen,
Two city council.
two city councilmen, the chairman and a city
Or
councilman.
county commissioners.
Sorry, thank you. County commissioners. And the one without the mask is the chairman, and the one with the mask has got his panties in a wad because the chairman's not wearing a mask. And he just said, and this is going to be relevant in a few minutes, he just said, Sheriff, I'm going to ask you once, are you going to enforce? And then the chairman says, you're out of order. Go ahead.
Peck.
You should leave the county.
Please keep it in order. I'm asking for approval of minutes for August 10th, 2021. Is there any revisions, corrections, or additions? Seeing none, the minutes are approved. Next, we'll go to the commissioner updates.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
point of
Johnson.
order.
Point of order.
I believe it is in the county's best interest, your best interest, and in the people's best interest that we have an executive session for you to receive legal counsel.
Already received it.
Don't need any other?
Nope.
Intend to conduct the meeting without a mask and without
Yes,
these
sir.
people masks?
I am. Yes.
Okay, well, I'm not going to participate in an unlawful meeting where
Wow.
you
Well,
incite people.
Now, hang on.
Seriously, bye.
Bye.
Bye. I'm not going to participate in an unlawful
That
meeting.
scene from
Bye.
Tombstone. Well, bye.
Bye.
Order.
Where you incite others to violate the law. I don't have to.
I'm not inciting others. It's their free will.
Forgive me.
Commissioner Mullen, will you conduct the meeting with me?
It is my understanding that if we conduct
Another-
Bye.
Another eunuch.
conduct a meeting,
Another eunuch. Oh, I
allowing
should have
people
told
to come
Mr.
in
Stone
here
he was a
unmasked,
eunuch.
that
Oh,
nothing
but
that
he's such a
happens
eunuch, he
today
can't even
will
actually
be
leave.
legal. And I would ask Sean Sant to stand up.
Yeah,
and
if
if
you
All right.
Here comes the attorney.
will
Here
not be
comes
legal.
the
It's gonna
county
happen
attorney.
today.
I would have
This meeting
given
is gonna be just for
anything to
background.
have been a commissioner in the room at this time so that I could have questioned the county attorney.
So this is about Inslee's mandate, Inslee's dictate.
Yeah.
About these masks.
Yeah.
And Commissioner Clint, I don't know how to say his name, Didier, is basically engaging in civil disobedience. He says peaceful noncompliance. What he calls civil disobedience. By not wearing, he's saying, I'm not wearing the mask, I'm not putting it
I
on.
think he actually says peaceful noncompliance. Somebody does in this video.
Wanted to find out, I would reopen the opportunity if the board chose to go in executive session, we could further discuss the legal merits or any legal questions going forward, or I could simply address kind of the issue that I believe Commissioner Mullen has brought up, as well as Commissioner Peck.
Mr. Sant, you've already went over the legal issues with me in my office. I'm good with those. I'm good about the repercussions upon myself. I serve this community also. You're seeing a vast majority of it in here. They are concerned about a mandate becoming law. And I know that our legislature supposedly gave him this authority. As citizens, we don't accept that. And we want civil disobedience in this room to make a point. We cannot have our God-given liberties taken away by a governor.
Hoorah.
Flat out.
Well, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that probably more than you know. But
No, you don't.
No, you don't. He's a
when I
liar.
was elected to represent the people as well, I took an oath of office. I have a bar membership in this state, and that's very important to me, my family, not just me. My family attended law school with me. They
Okay,
attended the
pause that,
military.
JC. He has already told you where his loyalty lies.
Mm-hmm.
And don't tell me it's the bar. His loyalty is not with the bar. His loyalty is with the paycheck. He says, we made an investment. My family made an investment. It's not about his oath, because he's going to tell you his oath, but he doesn't get the oath. If the oath actually meant something, he would understand what it says. He would actually listen to himself say it out loud. But anyway, he has told you where he stands.
Allowed me to go to law school following my service. So this is an investment for me personally, obviously, but I've had to reflect upon the oath of office that I took. And the oath of office is very similar to the oath that each of you as elected officials had taken. It basically says, I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington and all local ordinances, and that
Okay,
I will
pause
faithfully
there,
and
JC.
impartially perform.
He is reading the oath of office. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Washington and the laws and the ordinances, right? So what he's saying, what I would have said is, pardon me, Mr. Attorney, County Attorney, let me ask you a question. If a law conflicts with the Constitution, how do you enforce the Constitution and the law at the same time? Because your oath requires you to support and defend all of them at the same time, not one over the other.
And he would tell you, it's not my job to do that. It's not your job to do that. And he says, we got to follow the proper channels and go to the proper places. And so he makes this ridiculous argument. Basically, you got to bow to the king and beg the king to settle it for you.
Then the question then comes, please repeat your oath to me. I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't say I will wait on the courts to tell me how to support and defend. The oath is very clear. It is a personal oath, and it is an oath it is a promise to the people. You cannot keep your promise because you promised I will do this if you're waiting around for somebody else to tell you to do it.
Perform and discharge the duties of the office, whichever office it is, according to the law and the best of my ability. I firmly believe that given the opportunity, and we've reviewed the order as you all have, the proclamation 20-25.15. I think it's important to note that this was not some kind of power grab that the governor took upon himself. This was power that was designated and authorized by the legislature as recent as 2019. And I recognize we have one of our state reps present in the room. He could confirm that he as a legislative member participated in that vote. It was almost unanimous.
Mr. Sant, can I ask a question?
Yes.
What is the supreme law of the land?
The Constitution of the United States.
There you go. And we're upholding the Constitution right now.
Well, hold on. So
he mentions in that first part that, which has been the argument. We talked about this in regards to Michigan, Washington, all these orders. So this attorney rejects separation of power.
Yeah. So
he believes that the legislature, through a statutory act, can grant extra constitutional power to the executive branch. So one branch can grant power to another branch of government.
And he will actually say several times throughout this that it was duly passed.
Mm-hmm.
Here he says by near a majority. But once again, it all stems down to the confusion about hierarchy of authority, right? First off, I have studied the Washington Constitution. I have taught the Washington Constitution several times. The Washington Constitution contains a section on separation of powers. And it says that the legislature makes the laws and the executive branch executes them, authorizing the governor to issue mandates to be enforced as law is conferring upon the governor an authority to create legislation. That is a violation of separation of powers. It's a violation of the Washington Constitution. And in the Washington Constitution, if a law is made outside the authority of the Constitution, it is an unconstitutional act. His oath, by the way, as an attorney, and he said after my service, so I'm assuming that meant he was either in the military or working in law enforcement somewhere, which means that he took that oath again, requires him to understand and read the Washington Constitution and know when power is being inappropriately exercised, unjustly exercised. And he doesn't get that. Now, what I wish Commissioner Clint had actually said was, okay, the supreme law of the land is the Constitution of the United States, but what is the supreme law of the land in Washington? Because the Washington Constitution is the supreme law of the land of Washington. And the Washington Constitution does not allow the legislative branch to delegate to the executive branch law-making power, as especially in their separation of powers clause. It says it can't be lawfully be done.
Yep. He says emergency changes all that.
Emergency.
Yep.
No.
Somebody
the
can say
Constitution was created in an emergency
Yep.
for emergencies. It can't be altered by emergencies. And they got a bust of Benjamin Franklin sitting behind them.
Basically, the Constitution grants majority of all the rights that we enjoy to the states.
Did you catch that? I want to hear that
The
again.
United States includes the state of Washington's Constitution as adopted under the 10th Amendment. Basically, the Constitution grants majority of all the rights that we enjoy to the states. The states are allowed to have these.
Yeah, so
he says that the Constitution
Mhm,
gives state authorities authority over your rights.
mhm.
It puts your rights in the hands of the state is what he just says.
And
The
part-
Constitution
yeah.
does that.
And the argument is because the Constitution gives all this power to the state of Washington, through its legislature, has decided that the governor ought to have this power. But the Constitution of the state of Washington does not say that. The Constitution of the state of Washington says the exact opposite. I don't think this guy, attorney or not, for the county or whatever, has actually ever read the Washington Constitution. I bet he hasn't. If he does, he has no idea what the Washington Constitution actually says.
I think Know Nothing might be back under a different name.
Oh.
I'm not sure. Person's making similar arguments.
Yeah.
Which I don't comprehend the perspective. Well, you elect them, right? Well, there's courts and there's lawyers, and so somehow that means you become their servants.
Oh, no.
Well, that's what we have them for, and they're supposed to decide.
Yeah.
And don't they do that? And so you just wait around for that. So Rosa Parks, what's your problem? This is why we have judges and lawyers. Why don't you just
Martin
sit down in the
Luther
back of the
King.
bus?
What the heck's your
What's
problem?
your problem?
See,
We have
here's the
judges
thing.
and lawyers for this.
Here's the thing.
And he literally says that,
Yeah,
right? He says this
yeah.
in his argument that when you as an individual decide, because if the laws exist, then they must be followed until a court changes them. And so he says in this meeting that when you as an individual decide which laws should be followed, that makes you the tyrant.
Yes.
So
Yes.
he literally out of his own mouth makes the argument that Rosa Parks was in fact the tyrant, not the city of Montgomery, but Rosa Parks was the tyrant because she, as an individual, decided there was an ordinance that she was not going to follow. And
Yeah.
that is the definition of tyranny, according to this prosecuting attorney
Here's
in Franklin
the thing.
County.
There's this pervasive misconception that the courts were designed to determine what was constitutional and not. That is not true. The courts are designed to weigh the
Yep,
law
see?
to
Notice
the
him.
standard of the Constitution. But the courts are only one part of government. And when you create in this false paradigm that the courts are somehow the only people that can make this decision, then what you really, which is an irony here, right? Because first, you have to say, oh, well, that's the courts. We can't touch that, which is the definition of separation of powers. But in the same mouth, say, guess what? There is no separation of powers because the legislature can grant additional powers
To the executive.
The executive. Well,
But you got to wait for the court.
But you got to
'cause
wait for the courts.
That's only them. That's what they do. You can't do that.
Separation of powers. In that same false argument, they will deny the other two branches the authority to check and balance the courts. If the courts can check the laws made by the legislature, if the courts can check the executive, which is the governor, then why is it that the legislature, the executive, cannot check the courts? And let us all be reminded, in the Washington Constitution and in every, can I whisper like Joe Biden? And in every constitution of the states, all political power is derived from the people. Do you know what that means? We are the creator of government, which means we are the judge of its power. That's it. You have to know we are the ultimate check and balance. And no, Marbury versus Madison is their also go-to argument, which, by the way, doesn't even say what the modern post-constitutional courts say. It says, Marbury versus Madison says the courts judge the law, okay? They don't say that they are the judge of what is constitutional or not. And Marbury versus Madison never asserts that the courts are the only and ultimate judge. They say they are part of the system
Of checks.
So I wish my prayer for you today, whoever you are out there repeating the trained ignorant nonsense of these lawyers, please take the time to read this stuff yourself. Stop parroting the ignorant slaves, okay? Stop parroting the ignorant slaves. Now, I will give him something. Okay? Because I don't think we're going to have time to go through the whole thing today, unless you want to, because I'm good. All right. He starts talking about, I'm the attorney for the county. This is the legal argument that I have to make. If I'm in court, this is what I have to do. So as the county attorney, I have to advise you of these things. Okay? He is correct. As the county attorney, and I often tell people that all the time, look, I will teach you what your liberty is. I will teach you what the Constitution says. The minute you make me step in that courtroom, I've got to play by the court's rules. I've got to follow how they work. That's how it goes. We'll argue your rights. We'll argue the Constitution, but there are certain things that check boxes that we have to do. Now, so as the county attorney, he's absolutely right, but he's conflating something, JC. He's conflating the court's legal argument with the people's authority.
Right.
The people's authority, as the chairman, Commissioner Clint, is talking about, is superior to the court's authority. So we don't have to sit around until the courts say. I will also say this. He is right. We should be protesting on the steps. He is right. We should be filing lawsuits. But the exercise of protest, the exercise of lawsuits does not eliminate the authority of the people to engage in peaceful non-compliance. And it's just, this existing state of emergency establishes a false premise. He goes on to say, Donald Trump issued a state of emergency, and Joe Biden has continued this. I would have loved to have said to him, please, sir, show me in Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution where the President of the United States has the authority to declare emergencies and to declare superior power over the states. I really want to know that, because I'd love, my oath says I have to follow the Constitution first and the laws second. So help me out here, because I got to know where in the Constitution it's allowed for them to do that. Now, what's interesting is the sheriff stands up and takes off his mask and says he's not arresting anybody.
Right.
I'm not arresting anybody,
Kudos.
which blows the doors off the whole meeting, because, you know, the masked panty waists in the room who've been up and down, because he wants the courage to leave, but he doesn't have the courage to leave. He doesn't even have the stones to leave. So you watch him in this meeting, stand up, stand down, stand down. He walk back and forth. I'm like, I don't even know what he's doing. It's like, I'm here, I'm not here. I want to leave, but my mommy won't let me. I don't know what's going on there. But the masked panty waists are standing there, and they're like aghast that the sheriff stands up, takes off his mask. You've taken off your mask. Well, I want people to hear and understand me, so I've taken off my mask. And he does what he's supposed to do. He says, I'm trying to keep the peace here. Let's just be civil. Let's conduct this meeting. But I want you to know I'm not arresting anybody.
Amen. Good
Amen.
sheriff.
Amen. So look, you got to know the key things here. The oath, the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the state, and the laws. You have to be able to do all three things at the same time. If a law conflicts with the Constitution, you can't enforce it. It is an unenforceable, null and void law. And that's what the commissioner is saying. We've got to take a stand. And I love JC that he takes a stand all the way through, in spite of what the attorney says. And the attorney, you know, he conducts himself in a professional way. He makes the typical legal arguments that he's trained to make. He reads the storyline of the legal propaganda, the federal and judicial supremacist propaganda, but he's just wrong. He's just wrong. And the one
He's
thing
Casper
you mentioned,
Milquetoast.
yeah, the thing that really bugs me, and this is the thing that pops my cork more than anything, JC, you mentioned it. If we just allow people to choose which laws they can enforce, or which laws they will follow, and which laws we will not follow, that's anarchy. No, sir, that actually is liberty, because you know what the alternative is? To allow the government to decide which laws they can enforce and not enforce, regardless of what the Constitution says. That is tyranny. So you either have the people as a check and balance on the authority they've delegated. Let's remind you, the people have delegated authority to the government. They are the owners. All political power comes from the people. The people are the owners of the power. They are the check and balance. So to say that the people can't say, whoa, wait a minute. Now, I'm not saying blanket disregard law. I'm saying you don't have to follow law that is not authorized by the Constitution, because it has no legal authority. That's the rule. But the alternative is, if the people can't check and balance, the alternative is that you allow the government to decide what power they have and what power they don't have. Because relying on the courts, the courts are a branch of the government. So what you're saying is, if I have to sit around like some little slave waiting for the courts to tell me what I can and cannot do, what you're telling me is that the government, the courts, are the ultimate authority of their own power, and there is no check and balance and there is no limit. So excuse me, I would rather have the people who created the government in control of the government than the government who gets to decide what the limit of their power is.
Well, he shifts it in the middle of the argument. He shifts, again, conflating things. He talks about a trial of fact. We're not talking about a trial of fact, right? He said, well, you'd bring in the evidence of the
what's what I say?
COVID
He's conflating the court argument with the rights of the people.
And how many are sick and all this. And, so there's a difference between, here's the Constitution, this is the framework of government. Anybody can look and see what those restrictions are and whether you're operating outside of that. That's completely different than somebody saying, hey, here's this violation that's been made, and here's the evidence we're going to present to prove, this criminal act or this violation.
JC, this is a really good question. I think that this is a good question because this is a good teaching moment. I'm going to put it up on the screen. Why is the people the ultimate arbiter? Isn't that why we created 3 systems to regulate and distribute the power, responsibilities to regulate their say to those who they vote in? No. The only purpose for the creation of government is to secure the rights of the people. The Constitution itself has already distributed that power.
Correct.
It is not up to the government to determine what power is distributed. It is up to those in government to follow the law of the Constitution in the distribution of that power for the single purpose of securing the people's rights. We do not create government to regulate our rights. We create government to secure our rights. And the constitutions establish the standard and the parameters, the limits, the boxes, the few and defined of those powers that the government gets to use.
Enumerated powers.
Enumerated powers they get to use to secure our rights. Can I just say, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. The only reason government exists is to secure our rights. And the authority they have to secure our rights is through our consent. Our consent is written specifically enumerating our consent in the constitutions. And when government operates outside the Constitution, they're operating outside our consent, and now they are unjust.
Amen.
And yes, there are way too many laws in America.
That's kind of a no-brainer.
That's a
isn't it?
no-brainer. I don't know. That's like K4 stuff. So
Right.
there are way too many laws.